Okay, certified photo training peoples, welcome. We're gonna review some of your images today. Um, I know that this challenge was a different one for everybody, and I'm gonna expect to see some missed focal points because it's extremely tough to focus on yourself when you're behind the camera. So if you miss your focal point, don't worry about it. Gotta say though, when I pulled these all up on screen, like you're seeing here, I'm like, whoa! I got a lot of people staring at me. Let's dive right into it. I like to pick them at random. So, any, meeny, miny, mo. Let's go with this guy here, girl here, and I'll bring that one up on screen. Check that one out. So the things that I look for, obviously, when you're doing like self-portraits, you can't criticize anything really done with the photograph itself. I mean, the only thing you can really look at is focal point, exposure, creative ideas, and execution. So looking at this one here, it does look like we've got a pretty sharp focal point. And again, we're looking at Facebook images, which are pretty compressed. So, what I like to do is zoom in a little bit just to check my focal point. But as you can see there, you get a lot of pixelation. So, here we're looking at a pretty good exposure. I wouldn't say that this is too bright at all. Actually, I think this exposure is really nice. And in fact, I like this little catch light that you've got right here. Position of shadowing is looking good. You guys have been hearing me talking about the position of shadow a lot. You always want to break the shadow on the cheekbone like you see here. And then light both sides of the face evenly, making sure you get enough light into the eyes too of your portrait subject. And we're talking about self-portraits here, but the same rules apply. The same rules apply across all different types of photography. Doesn't matter what niche you're in, always going to come down to focal point and exposure. And I've got this on my screen, which is sometimes hard to judge because my big screen is a little bit off on color compared to my actual monitor. We're looking at a really good image here. I don't know if I would change much here. If we were to talk about post-production here, I would drop the highlights in the hands. The highlights are looking a little bright, and this is common for light-skinned people. You're going to see this a lot. And sometimes when you drop the highlights a little bit in post-production, and I'm talking Lightroom here, you will get, what that does is it draws the viewer's attention to the face is what your ultimate goal is in any portrait. And so by dropping the highlights, you'd be dropping the highlights here. But guess what? You'd also be dropping them here, which may not be the best choice. So you'd go in and selectively adjust you would selectively adjust the highlights here. And again, we're going to nitpick, and you guys know that I nitpick a lot. So, focus is looking good. Now, I want to make clear here that there is a difference between focus and focal point, okay? So, focus would be, the entire face. But a focal point would be using your AFS or your single shot or whatever it is on your camera that allows you to selectively focus on a very specific point in your image. And I can't tell if this is a post-production process or shallow depth of field, but I am seeing a focus rather than a focal point. So, and again, I mean, we're talking self-portraits here, so unless you got an assistant with you, which kind of deceives the purpose of a focal point, or of a self-portrait. You're looking good here. This looks great. So not much to change here. I think everything looks good. Only thing here would be the distraction in the background. You always want to pay attention to the backgrounds. Okay, we're going to be talking about that a lot today. When you build a portrait, what you're going to want to do is, I know that the person is obviously the most important part of the subject or of the photograph, but you're going to want to watch out for your background. And a great photographer will always build their portraits from the background first. So you start from the background first, and then you bring everything else into fruition here, and then you bring it into the pose, and then you bring it in and this all happens in one full swoop, which is why people have a hard time posing. Moving on from there, I like this one. You got a very pretty smile there, girl. Focus looks great. Focal point looks great. This is well executed. And then we were just talking about focusing versus focal point. And here we've got a self-portrait that's within a mirror. So it's to be expected that you're going to get a more accurate focus when you're actually in a mirror rather than setting a self timer or a remote. Nice catch light in the eyes there. The lighting's looking really nice and even on each side of the face. Good job with your shadow gradient along the left. I'm really liking this background highlight here. Let's see what else I'm here to look at. I'm seeing some banding here. That could be from my screen or Facebook compression that has nothing to do with your photography. That's just, again, I want everybody to know that when I do look through these and judge these, that I am looking for those Facebook compression things, and it has no bearing whatsoever on my judging. So just so you know that. A very polished looking image. If I were you, I would go in and, I mean, just since this is such a great image, I would, just pick up little, clean up little dots like this, It would be, it's amazing how much just little cleanups like this will polish your images going forward, bringing your attention to the face. And with that said, I mean, excellent job. There's nothing else to really say about it. Exposure looks good. Focus looks good. Focal point looks good. Very nice catch light. And here's what I want everybody to be seeing too is you have to see light differently, okay? You have to see light differently, and to see light differently, you have to be looking at the shadows, okay? And you see the shadow here? When you see your shadow, you reverse work where that light source would be, okay? And you're easily able to do that, especially with the catch light. So what I'm seeing here is a window light, okay? So I'm seeing a window light here, natural light. And I don't have your settings up with me, but we're looking at a lower ISO here, a good focal point. I can't guess the shutter speed on this one, but we're talking about probably a lower ISO. Maybe 1/25th of a second. And aperture wise, depending on your focal length, looks like you got 18 to 55 on there, possibly, or 28 to 70, maybe, wide angle. I'm going to say you're probably at 5.6 here, which is great. I mean, this is a great image. I have nothing else to. I know some of you guys are going to be looking for constructive criticism, and if you got something that comes across my screen, I'm not going to tell you anything different other than what it is. And then great amount of headroom here too. I watch a lot of people mix up this headroom, which is indicative of using the center focusing dot and not recomposing your image afterwards. So great job. I don't see too much. Now that I'm looking, I'm seeing a stray hair right here. And again, this just goes into, cleaning up these little dots. When you've got an image that you really love, it's really nice to go in and just polish those sort of things. When I'm working in the portrait studio, I actually have a set stylist that I work with that will make sure that these sort of things aren't missed, which can be cleaned up in Photoshop, no problem at all. You know what I mean? Let's pull this guy up here. And when I say guy, I mean girl. I'm seeing a lot of pixelation here. Again, that's Facebook compression mixed with a mobile upload, so that has no bearing here whatsoever. Looking here, you've got a mist focused, and I can see that the focus is actually on the tree. I can see what you were going for here with throwing the leaves and everything like that. Great expression. Let's see what am I. Sometimes it's going to take me a moment, so if I kind of fade off for a second here, I'm just assessing the photograph here. A little leaf here up top. Some leaves going on here. Now, if you had focused, here's my guess of what happened. I bet you were leaning forward or leaning backwards towards the tree when you set up your shot, and then when you were to throw the leaves, your body naturally falls forward, and then you're no longer on that horizontal focal plane. Now, when I say horizontal focal plane, imagine that your camera is focused here on the tree, okay? So if your camera is focused on the tree, then imagine a wall. Imagine a horizontal wall. That's your horizontal focal plane. So when you move outside of that plane, you're going to be out of focus. So that's all you're missing here. The exposure is looking good. The only thing that you're missing is that movement forward. When you moved forward, and that's what I'll do with my group families when I'm doing portraits, is I'll work on their focal plane, and I'll actually educate them on that. And I'll tell them that where your head position is, forward and back, especially the people in back need to be leaning forward a little bit, and then the people in front need to be leaning back a little bit so that their heads are all on the same focal plane. That way, when you focus, everybody's head's in focus, okay? Because they're all on the same horizontal wall or horizontal plane or horizontal focal plane. Hopefully that makes sense. My goal here is to get everybody, to understand these focal planes and exposure. Now, when you're looking at exposure here, you're in the shade, which is great. And what's happening here is your skin tone looks natural, okay? Back here you've got highlights, but that's no big deal because as long as your exposure is accurate on your face, then you're good to go. Looking at this image here, I gotta tell you, it's strange to have everybody staring right at me. Staring at, I remember this one coming through. I try to keep these anonymous. I mean, obviously I know some of these people are. I do try to keep this anonymous just for fairness purposes. But looking at this image here, it's looking like your focus is great. As far as I can tell from Facebook compression, your focus is great. Your exposure is quite a bit under. Now I'm gonna extrapolate on that a little bit, okay? Because photography and art are subjective, okay? So my opinions are my opinions, okay? But facts are facts, okay? So when you're talking about a photography itself, okay, we're talking about focusing with your lens, and we're talking about exposure with your image sensor, and your shutter curtain is what allows that focus light to hit your image sensor. So when I look at this image, I know it's underexposed, but that doesn't mean it's a bad image. What that means is maybe that's what you're going for, and people make a great living off of those sorts of things. And once you know the rules, you can break them all you want. And now I'm looking at this catch light, and I'm pretty curious where that catch light is coming from. And here's a little ninja hack, everybody. If this was if I had more pixels here, I could probably get a pretty good judgment of what light source this is. To me, this is looking possibly like a ceiling fan, maybe. It's hard to tell. But focus looks great. The focusing looks great. I shoot in the dark all the time. Dark images is my favorite type of photography, so this one goes a long way with me. Other than that, I would like to see a little bit of the edge here of your head here. I'm seeing a little bit of it, and it depends on what screen you're on. I sure would like to see a little bit of that edge just to pull yourself out from the background a little bit. Other than that, it's great. Great image. Now we're talking about, let's bring this one up since we were just talking about light in the eyes. Here, everything is excellent, okay? Everything here is excellent. I'm trying to find something wrong with it, so give me a second. What we're looking at here is an extremely sharp focal point, okay? Not just a focus, we're talking about a focal point, okay? And the focal point's right here. And he's at a shallow depth of field, so he's at a focal point here. And I see this man using 2 different light sources. And I don't want to guess I don't like guessing what they are unless I'm very certain. This one's definitely round. And this could very well be a modeling lamp from a portrait light. I'm unsure. This one here may be a flash unit flickering. And that's the thing, everybody. You'll be able to catch the same, as long as you're as long as your subject is facing towards you, you should be able to pick up all light sources in their eyes. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is maybe a portrait light and a flash. Which, let me look at the rest of this. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. All right, what I'm looking at here is, I'm gonna guess. Okay, I'm gonna guess. We're looking at a modeling lamp lighting him directly, and then we're looking at possibly a bounce flash that's bouncing off of either the wall over here or the wall off the ceiling to minimize the shadow, the direct shadow that would be behind him regardless. So let's talk about depth of field for a second. Since this focal point was here, what depth of field is the amount of radial blur that begins away from your focal point. So if we look at how sharp his eye is here, and then we look over here and see how blurry his eye here, that tells me he's at a lower aperture, okay? So what aperture is he at? I don't know, but I'm going to say it's at about 2.8, 4, 5.6. He's at a wide angle here, okay? And I know he's at a wide angle because I can see the barrel distortion here. So we're talking about 18 to 25 millimeter and wisely focused on the eye. If he would have dropped to, say, f8, this would also be in focus, unless this blur is added in post, which I don't think that it is. Yeah, I don't think that it is. But I could be wrong. Like I said, these are my opinions, and I will continue to clarify my opinions versus facts. Headroom's looking good. Margins from left to right are looking good. The only, again, okay, so fact is, this is a great image. Opinion, I sure would like to see some sort of shadow along the cheekbone here, and definitely not a shadow down the face, but a shadow along the side here. Hang on, my phone's ringing. Potential spam, that's great. I would like to see a little bit of shadow here, and you can get this in a way in which if you were to light your subject on this side, and then place your, this is what a lot of people get mixed up, is they want to shoot with the light side facing the camera, which is the most, they call that broad lighting, and what we want to do is short light, because when you short light, and let me go back up. And short lighting would be if you were to place your light source relatively behind your subject so that it casts a shadow, and then position your subject in such a way so that shadow gets cast here. Okay, and what that does is hides part of the face, but more importantly, what it does is mix with this catch light, evenly lit exposure and skin tone, and then the mix of the shadow, what it does is it creates that three-dimensional depth, okay? And what we're doing ultimately in photography is translating a three-dimensional world that we see with our two eyes into a two-dimensional world that a camera sees, okay? And you can exploit that by creating that highlight mid-tone to shadow range. So I don't see a lot of shadow here, which I wish I would, and I'm guessing you're trying to avoid that here on the edge of you by bouncing the shadow, which is the right thing to do. But again, we're broad lighting here, and I would like to see a little bit of shadow there. Other than that, this is great. I mean, this focal point, like I was saying just a moment ago, is there's a difference between focal point and focus, okay? And there's also a difference between an image that's in focus and a completely still image, okay? Moving on from there, let's bring her up. Okay, I remember this one coming through. I remember this one. This was 1/10 of a second, okay? And let's talk about shutter speed for a moment, okay? 1/10 of a second is very slow in photography. You have to imagine that shutter speed is in real time, okay? So 1/10 of a second is way slower than 1/60th of a second. It's all about fractions, okay? It's all about fractions, all right? Now, when we talk about 1 second, that's really slow, okay? What's faster, okay? And let me ask you this. What's faster, 1 second or 1/10 of a second? What's a faster duration of time? okay? When you have a faster duration of time, you have less amount of time to allow light in, okay? So that's why a faster shutter speed will darken your image. So when you use a faster shutter speed, you must compensate with a wider aperture to allow more light in because you're just let in less light with your shutter speed, or increase your image sensor sensitivity to light, which should usually be your last choice because your image sensor is what makes up the quality of your image. Okay, and that's why we always say you want to go as low as you can with your ISO. Because the lower your ISO, the sharper your details, the richer your color, and so on and so forth. So what we're looking at here is an overexposed image, and that's because we're at 1/10 of a second, and we didn't balance out the exposure meter to meet that 1/10 of a second. And to be honest with you, I can't believe you stayed this still for 1/10 of a second. That was you can do those slow shutter speeds, and I do them all the time. I mean, I just did one for this self-portrait challenge of me in the mirror of 4 seconds. Okay, so you can do it, and that's why I want to clarify rules versus breaking the rules. When you know the rules, you can break them all you want as long as it's your desired result. But then let's talk about the focus here. The focus looks great, okay? Especially for 1/10 of a second, because you got to imagine, when you're at a slow shutter speed, if you move even slightly. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm seeing actually the focus is back here, which is indicative of being a self-portrait. And like I said at the beginning of this, is that's going to happen because when you focus your camera first, you're going to pick up what's behind you first. So my recommendation for anybody who's watching this right now and is finding their images come up that have the background that's the sharpest point in the image is to place something where you're going to be. So have somebody hold their hand out where your face is going to be and focus on that, and then switch your camera to manual focus so it doesn't try to refocus. Or stack some books up and put this little guy over here on top of it where your face is going to be. Focus on that, switch to manual focus. That way, after you set your self timer and you shoot your photo and you get into position, now you're in that same horizontal focal plane that you just focused on. Okay, so we got a missed focus here and a missed exposure. But we'll work on that with you. No problem. There's your catch light. We're looking at window light right there. And you guys, I want to lean heavily into catch lights on this training here, okay? What time am I at here? I don't want to make this 23 minutes. Catch lights are important to photographs of people, okay? Because humans don't realize it, but when you're looking at a photograph, no doubt you go to the eyes first, but more importantly than that, you go directly to that highlight, that twinkle in the eye, okay? So hopefully that helped you out a little bit there. Work on your horizontal focal plane. Like I said, when you're doing a self-portrait, I'm going to see more and more of this happening. It happens all the time. All the time. Don't feel bad about it. You're always going to miss a focus, okay? Nobody's photos are always perfect, okay? So know that when you are doing a self-portrait like this, that, stack something up, hold somebody's hand out, or put something in there that you can focus on selectively, and then switch your camera to manual focus. That way, when you actually take your photo or depress your shutter button, and your self timer is going off, beep beep beep, that you can get into position where that focus is set at for your lens, and that's an optical thing, and we'll go more into that into the group. All right, buddy. I see you. I see what you're spitting. Good job here, man. Let's look at your focal point here, though. I'm going to try to tear you apart here because I know how good you are. I knew this came through right away. Excellent job. It's too difficult for me to judge a focal point here. As you know, Francis, I think this is Francis. Yeah, Francis, yeah. As you know, There is a difference between focal point and focusing. So it's tough to judge here. I want to, from a Facebook compression angle, it's tough to judge where the focal point would be. But maybe it's right here, but it could very well be right here. I know you. I'm not going to go much further into this because we all know how great this one is. Great job, man. Let's bring this guy up here. Here's another thing you're going to run into with self-portraits, especially long durations like this. Sorry, I had to take a drink of water. When you're doing self-portraits, let's start off with the good, okay? This is a very creative vision, extremely creative vision, okay? You're putting yourself inside of light painting circle, and you're moving, and you're trying to get a focal point, and you got all this great sparklers and this great framing of yourself. All of that is extreme greatness, okay? So let's talk about the bad, or how you could fix it. Let's talk about whatever light source this is here. When you're light painting, when you're doing this sort of thing, let's stay away from any sort of ambient light that's coming through, okay? So when you're doing light painting like this, it works best. When I pause like this, it's because I have another train of thought. I like to take guesses. Let's see here. Is this a window light? Is it a window light? It depends what your white balance is like. All right. So anyway, we're rotating this. Well, I forget what he said what it was. I thought it was steel wool, but he said it was something different. I can't quite remember what it was. But when you're rotating something like that, naturally, you're going to be moving your body a lot, and that's why you're seeing yourself out of focus here. You very well may have been in focus when you started setting up your photo. But naturally, as you spin this, your body's gonna move, your face is gonna move, and there's nothing much you can do about that. We can start talking about slow sync flashes, which would actually help here. And the idea behind it, oh boy, do I want to go down this path right now. When we're talking, let's do it. Let's just do it. Here's what you could have done, bud. You could have, I would approach it this way. All right, so let's talk about slow and rear sync. Let's talk about one of them. Let's talk about rear sync, okay? So there's a flash mode you can use called rear sync. And the idea behind rear sync is that for the entire duration of your shutter speed, so let's just say it's 4 seconds, okay? Let's say your shutter speed is 4 seconds. With rear sync flash mode, you can take that 3.5 seconds and absorb all of this light right here, like you're doing here, without flashing yet, okay? And at that very last moment, that very last second, or the very last, and you can adjust where this flash will fire, but that's a whole nother topic. You could have gotten this. You could have gotten yourself in focus by using rear sync flash, because you could have been doing these rotations for 3.5 seconds or whatever. I'm saying it's 4 seconds. I don't know what you were at. But say it's 4 seconds. You could have done this rotation for 3.5 seconds, then stopped, and then sat there completely still. And then at the very last moment of that 4-second duration, your flash would have fired. Okay, and that would have froze you. That would have froze you in focus, as well as your... as long as your camera was focused on you, okay? Hopefully that makes sense, because I love your creative vision here, and I want to see you continue to grow with it. And if you have questions about rear or slow curtain flash, let me know. I can walk you through it, or you can do a simple Google listing on that. I remember this one coming through too. You did a really great job here, knowing that your shutter speed was so slow, okay? So I'm going to guess that you didn't move all that much because you were leaned against a branch, okay? So you guys will see me often do this when I'm doing slow shutter speeds, is lean against something because it just stabilizes. Imagine a marksman, okay? Imagine a marksman in the military, okay? Why is he so good at hitting a target a mile or 3 kilometers away, whatever? Why is he so good at that? Okay, it's because he controls his breathing, he stabilizes himself, and it's no different in photography at all. It's the exact same thing. Okay, so the fact that you are able to get yourself so sharp with such a slow shutter speed is impressive. Okay, so this is a great example of breaking a rule that other people will tell you not to do and doing it anyway and still executing it well. Now, do you know whether or not that was the rule is the question? And I know you're in my course, so we'll go over this a little bit more heavily, Heather. So let's go ahead and go over that. And then here we've got a little bit of extra headroom. I love the black and white. I don't love the repeating patterns on the clothes, and that's my opinion, okay? My opinions are that repeating clothing or clothing with brands on them will pull your eye away from what's important, and that is the person's face. Okay, that's my opinion, and it's a very strong opinion. Okay, do it all you want, but I tell you what, when you're shooting family portraits, when they see their faces instead of their clothes first, they spend a lot more money. All right, Catherine, I know you because I appreciate strength. I know you had a 10-second duration on this. I think if you're watching this video, you know you missed your focus point, so let's not talk about that. You should have focused on your face and you missed it because you were so focused on doing what you were doing. I don't know, this is gymnastics or yogi. But I appreciate strength. So let's talk about that. Amazing. I don't even know. How long were you able to hold yourself up like that? And you even have your name on these. Wow. I like you. Great job. I know that this is not an easy thing to hold. I know. Catherine, if you just focused on your face and not the body, this would have been fantastic. Okay, and since you missed your focus, it's just not there. Other than that, your dedication, your work, your hard work at putting into this, the window light, the determination, the appreciation for photography behind it, I'm not going to knock this image down whatsoever. The only thing you missed here was the focal point on your face. And again, that if you've been watching this whole video, is that's going to happen with self-portraits, and that's why we made this challenge, self-portraits, is just to hammer home the point of how important focus and focal point is. Now, if you would have been able to have like your boyfriend or friend or somebody hold this position for you and then focus on your face, and then you got into position, then you would have been able to nail this focus. Or like I said, you can stack something up, where your face is going to be, and then focus on that directly. And then turn your camera to manual focus so that it doesn't attempt to refocus. And that's what I would have done here. With that said, I don't want to just breeze over this image because I love it so much, but we're getting long on our time here. So, great job, Catherine. All right, Shane, buddy. Blew me away here, man. You blew me away here. Focus is there. Exposure is perfect. Low angle. Tripod. Just extremely creative use of thought, man. Like, this is... it's rare that I don't... it's rare that I see something that comes... Man, how can I word this? It's rare when I see something that I haven't thought of yet, okay? And this is definitely not something I thought of, okay? Man, good. I've been watching Shane grow since he joined my group, and he is well on his way. I'm not gonna say anything else about this, Shane, bud, man. You crushed it. You crushed it. You impressed me. Just the creative thought here. I've been watching you think outside the box for so long, man, that you're on, like, just keep doing it, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. I badly want you to be in my course, man. I want to take you and mold you into what you want to be. And we've had this conversation privately, you know this. This is just, I've never seen anybody do anything like this. I don't know if maybe you caught this idea from somebody else, or all the power to you if you came up with this on your own. This is something that, like, people dream of compositing, and you did it with a photograph without compositing. You know what I'm talking about? All right, Ashley. I know how you know shadow placement. I know how you know shadow placement, so I'm going to breeze over this one because Ashley knows that we spent enough time together on the side that I don't need to go through as much longer. But I do want everybody else to see this, okay? So Ashley's focal point is right here, bang on, perfect, okay? Then we're going to talk about shadow placement, okay? Ashley knows, she's been through my course, she knows how important it is to translate the three-dimensional world into a two-dimensional image, and you do that with highlights, midtones, and a shadow gradient on the face. Ashley knocked it out of the park. So I want to compare that, since we're talking about shadow placement. And guys, I'm not knocking anybody down here, all right? I'm trying to make everybody really great, okay? I want to compare these two images, okay? And the only thing I want to compare about these two images is the shadow placement, okay? Look at the shadow placement here, and then look at the shadow placement here, okay? We can see much more of Ashley's face than we can see of her face here. And what we can see of her face is in shadow, but we want to see it in highlight because we want to see how beautiful they are. You know what I mean? So when you're talking about either self-portraits, family portraits, any portrait in general, you want to be able to see the front of their face as much as possible. And that's here. If you were to just turn your head a little bit and maybe recompose your angle, then you would have had this sort of shadow placement. So if you're watching this right now, if you're catching what I'm talking about right now, know that, like, you did an excellent job here, and the focus is great. The focus is actually a little low. I would have raised it up a little bit. The focus is here. The focal point should be here. And again, that's why we put this challenge out there, because focal points are probably the hardest thing to get in a self-portrait, okay? And this is why we're learning. So, you know, when you don't want to split unless you're doing it for a purpose. You know what I mean? Like, as a photography rule, as a portrait, you don't want to split somebody's face down the middle with highlight and shadow. You want to put highlight, shadow like that, and you want to break the cheekbone to show the beauty, okay? And with this one here, all we're seeing here is just this side of the cheek, and I want to see more of the face. You see what I'm saying here? I want to see more of your eyes. I want to see more of your face, and Ashley's looking a little down here, so we're not seeing so much of her eyes, but she knows the rules, and she can break them like a boss. And then I'm seeing a lot of grain here, so, noise. I come from the film era, so I often will call grain noise. I do remember this coming through. You are at a high ISO, so drop me a message or another link in the group, and we'll talk about your ISO. When you're at a high ISO, you will get this film grain look, but you're going to get color noise distortion when it's in color, okay? So I'm assuming maybe that's why you went black and white with this. Without zooming in, I'm seeing a lot of grain, and I like grain, okay? I often shoot at high ISOs in order to get that film-like effect. But at a high ISO, you can't miss your exposure within 1/3 of a stop at all. You have to hit your exposure perfectly. Okay, so when you're trying to exploit something that's really difficult, you have to understand it completely. Okay, and understanding it completely would be to understand that when you're at a high ISO, that is that your image sensitivity is high, and your image sensitivity is high because man, this is another path. I don't know if I want to go down with the amount of time we have left. I want you to imagine that like each pixel is 100 ISO, and that 200 ISO, you got 2 pixels clumped together. And at 400 ISO, you got 4 pixels clumped together, and so on and so forth. That's not an exact definition of what I'm trying to say here, but it's close. When you're talking about film and emulsion, you're talking about this sort of thing making up the film piece itself, and then you're ingraining, you're literally burning light into the emulsion itself, which gives it this effect. Just a tip here would be when you're doing portraits, I know self-portraits are extremely hard, but when you're doing portraits in general, let's make it look more like, let's pay more attention to where the light source is and where your subject's cheekbone is in comparison to that, okay? Now this image here blew me away, man. This image here, let me make this one big. Master of focal point here, okay? Look at how sharp this is. Look at how sharp his glasses are, okay? You can only get that sharpness with a focal point, okay? Now, if you're just doing focusing, you're doing like a matrix patterning that's like this wide, that's going to guess whatever is in focus, okay? When you're using a focal point, you get this super sharp area, okay? And that's what I mean, like, there is nothing sharper on this image than this area right here. Okay, and that's what I mean focal point. It's literally like imagine like a needle point, like the point of an edge. Okay, you want that focal point to be where you want your viewer's eyes to go first. Okay, so that said, buddy, you don't need any more from me on this one, man. Come on, you crushed this. Rule of thirds. The window blades, repeating patterns, you know I like that. Yeah, I mean, you crushed it. I can see your eyes. Enough detail here. Excellent job. And this is a great place to end our little monologue here. It's a little weird when I'm doing these monologues. I hope everybody feels good. Hopefully you learned a lot there. I will be continuing to do these with these weeks as they progress. It is a little bit time consuming, but check out the recording. It will be up shortly. If I did miss anybody, I'm really sorry. There has been a Facebook transition that has been happening, as you guys know. And sometimes like post topics don't get posted right. So today what I did was I did pull everything from the weekly photo challenge, and then I went through the media section looking for other self-portraits, and I did find a couple. So if you did not find yourself on this screen, I apologize. Send me a message and let me know. And with that said, we will be announcing the winners of this week's challenge and then announcing next week's challenge. So thanks a lot, and let me know what you thought of the video. Okay? Thanks a lot. See y'all later.